sunshine of the time.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another week of Enjoy the Walk podcast. Pumped to kind of dive in this week, Dante. We've got the RBC Heritage kind of taking center stage in the sports world for a change, and that was awesome and fun to see. We've got amazing news in the PGA Championship realm of things, but we're just happy to have another week with golf, man. It's great to have live golf back, and we're pumped to talk about it and hopefully get into some fun interviews again this week. So, man, how did the weekend treat you?
The weekend treated me well. I'm at the point where I don't even know what day it is anymore. But I took a nice 3 consecutive day off from golf because I said it before, there is playing too much golf. You can play too much golf. And that was me. So I took off for 3 days, played Sunday, and never felt better. I mean, I struck the ball so good that day. The swing felt great. Putting was so. Greens were a little on the slower side, but it was like 90 degrees and humid out. I think maybe one too many transfusions kind of rocked me on the 15th hole. I tripled it, and that kind of just made me from shooting 80 to where I could have easily broke 80 and shot 76, 77. Yeah.
I think we've all been there. I want to dive into that off the first bat. I want to know our listeners' opinion on this too, because we've done this so many times. You and I have played together plenty of times now where we've had enough drinks, and it's such a fine line between like riding the buzz of being perfectly buzzed and being in a happy state and still knowing where your limbs are going, and having that just one too many and your body's all over the place and doesn't know how to make a good golf swing.
And it didn't help that I was carrying my bag in like 90-degree heat and obviously walked. I was just getting double transfusions, and I was just sitting there. Oh boy. And it was like, you're right. It was at a point where, you had a nice little swing lube, I like to call it, like loosens you up a little bit. And then maybe that one or too many extra sips, and it just like hits you like a wall of bread. You're like, whoa, dude. I was like, all right. I knew I was trying to focus too. I knew I had a good round going. Everything was going well. And off the tee, I hooked it into like this tree area. I had to punch out. Then I wedged it, took a wedge, and I was all over the flag, but I was a little long. I flew it over the flag and just landed on the back of the fringe. It's like, all right, let's just get 5. So a short par 4, said, let's get 5. Get on out of here, and then we're good. We'll try and make it up on 17. Easy par 5 that can be easily eagled or birdie. So I was like, all right, here we go. So I came up a little short, and dude, it was pretty much like a 3 footer, no problem. I got up there, fully confident, pushed it. And that's when it was all hitting me. Okay. All right, great. All right, double. Missed again.
Right off the bat.
It's like, no, I didn't. Tapped, and I said, and I was steamed, and I said, okay. And this is after reading the night before I read 2 chapters of that book, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect, that Colby keeps hounding me to read for class. And I had all positive intentions, and the first 2 chapters were great. It was all about thinking ahead and, not dwelling on the past, typical positive stuff. And I was heated after that. But I said, all right, I'm blaming it on the transfusion, and then walk to the next day.
It's funny, man, whether I'm drinking beer out on the course, which a lot of the guys in the groups I play with, even do in the mornings. There's plenty of guys that crack some natty lights in the mornings and, 9, 10 a.m. after 5 or 6 holes in, and they play better. And, my buddy, shout out you, Jake Felch, he always says, I need my swing lube. So he's always, 2, 3 beers deep. But it's funny, and I'm maybe just the exception to the rule. Swing lube is good for me for about 1 drink, maybe 2. If I get into drink 4, 5, 6, I'm pushing that line of playing well. The only time it worked for me, and you can attest to this, I was like 6 or 7 Trulies deep at the Barstool Classic qualifier, and that's when I started playing better. we had more birdie looks after the rain delay where we drank for about an hour than we did the entire hour and a half, 2 hours before we got into the rain delay.
I wonder if it's the environment too, when
It's
depending
got
on
to be a
like,
little bit of both.
because I mean, you go out and play scramble because there's like three types of golfers, right? There's like the grinders out there that are, grinding out money matches because they're prepping themselves for their, I guess, say the Philly Open or something,
Mm-hmm.
their local state open, and these guys can play. They're like scratches and plus handicaps. And then you got the guy who's maybe single digit or whatnot, who goes out and likes to compete, but still likes to have fun. And then you got guys out there who are just looking out to have a good time. And I think it all kind of comes around like who you're with and the type of environment. Like, I mean, I can guarantee you, if you're playing in your local state am, you ain't cracking a sip of beer or any type of drink. You know what
Tell
I'm
you what, man,
saying?
I've heard stories, and this is both from Pennsylvania and Maryland now. I've heard stories from where guys just, they got a little personal stash, and it's not beers, but it's the Tito's or it's the Jim Beam out there on the course, and guys ride along to that. And I played with a guy in the Maryland Open that, I mean, now granted it's not drinks, but it was 4 or 5 cans of dip in a round. I mean, he was just ripping like big horseshoe lips of skulls. So I mean, whether it's beer or alcohol in general, or I think, of the tobacco kind, whether, I mean, we used to see all the greats back in the day. Arnie was a habitual ripper of the chain smoker.
Yeah, man.
So, I mean, whether it's beer or alcohol or, any kind of just tobacco, I think anything to get a little buzz going, it seems to help rather than hurt most of the times in moderation.
In moderation. Yeah. Nobody's sitting there just ripping shot for shot, and then 4 holes in, it kicks in, and then you can't even stand on your own 2 feet. I mean, everybody has their, I guess you can say, quote unquote, swing lube, whether it's, a beverage of sort or tobacco or even just some other type of, even if it's non-alcoholic or smoking, to where, you need to, or they're chewing gum, or I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the people are into like CBD gum or stuff like that, some type of sedative, I guess you can say, that kind of takes you away from the nerves that are in your loins, I guess. They're just like freaking out. So that's golf, man. It's just that one shot or that first tee, especially when you're stepping up on a tournament and you're
It's
just,
it's the best
whoa.
thing about it, man. I mean, and the fact that the one of the greatest golfers of all time, Tiger Woods, even says like, I even still to this day get nervous on tee shots. Like,
Yeah.
and that's what it's all about. And that's why golf is so amazing. There's never a point where I feel like with other jobs or people who play professionally, like there's never a point in golf where someone, steps up and is like, I've done this 1,001 times or 10,000 times. Like this is just habitual now. It's something about the game of golf that when you get over that little white ball, you still get some jitters, mostly because the guys playing it give a shit and they love the game so much. But I mean, let's be honest, even the greats get over a ball and sometimes think, boy, let's just not shank this.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, and like going back to the nerves thing, it's I guarantee you 95% of the time, it's just pure excitement for those who
Mm-hmm.
have that routinely do it. It's just, man, especially now that golf's back, they're sitting there like, man, we're back grinding. I'm back to my job. Let's go. And they're super excited. So their nerves are probably kicking it a little 10 times harder.
They have to be. Yeah, I mean, they just absolutely have to be. But I want to know, I mean, you said your transfusion was the drink of the day. We had transfusions when we wrapped up the rounds and after 9 when we were down here at Lighthouse Sound. Is the transfusion the go-to drink for you on the golf course during a hot summer day?
It's that or a nice Captain and Coke or Captain and Diet. It's that, yeah.
My
But
buddy, my buddy down here, Steve, will love to hear that. He is all about the Captain and Cokes.
well, before,
Something about an ice cold Captain and Coke just hits good, no matter how hot it is.
yeah, and before, I guess you can say, before I was notified or heard about the transfusion, and it became like the golf staple
Mm-hmm.
drink of all across the country. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was the Captain and Cokes, because it's just that I guess you can say it's just I don't know, it's good. The carbonation from the soda and just that captain, I have a friend of mine that we golf with now. He's a retired guy, and whenever we're in the tournaments, we'd always do, the little Captain Morgan, where he's got his leg up on the log, and we just start cracking up. And he would just bring his own bottle of Captain and bring his own bottle of Coke, and we would just like mix them up. So I would say that was, and I think I'm leaning more towards my the transfusion, especially in the summertime, because it's just so refreshing
Oh, for
it's
sure.
so refreshing.
Yeah. I also have been leaning towards, you talk about transfusion, and I feel like that's been put on a pedestal because of the Barstool podcasts. And I also have to just say, it's kind of the next drink I'm about to mention is very Barstool-esque. I have been downing, and when I say downing, I mean downing some Pink Whitney as of late with just a little bit of lemon seltzer and a bunch of ice. The Pink Whitney has been my go-to lately. It is
Gotcha.
just so refreshing, and not heavy. I can't tell you the last time I drank like a beer on the golf course, just because I just don't like the taste after like 2 or 3 beers. Sits heavy when it's hot out. It just doesn't go down
Dude, beer warms up so quick in the can when you're just out there in 90-degree heat. And it all comes down to, I think weather plays a huge factor of what you're in the mood for,
well.
especially, I mean, I'll probably crack open a beer in the fall, you know, rather than a
in the
transfusion.
in
Just,
the fall time when it's like 60s and like
yeah.
maybe 50s, beers goes down fantastically. But anything above like 75, 80 degrees, you can't drink it in a can, which is mostly what all the golf courses give you.
Hmm.
And if you're out in the golf course, I don't think, unless you're just drinking it very, very fast, because the minute you sit down, hit a couple shots and get back to it, beer's warm.
Yep. Yeah. And it's actually, it's like that today. We came after the round. So, New Jersey, they just opened up outdoor seating for
Hmm.
eating for COVID. So I guess they just decided at the Deer, which kind of is a little confusing on a customer standpoint. They they brought out all these tables and umbrellas right by the snack shack, and you remember it's right in between 9 and 10.
I do. It was
And
fantastic.
it's like I'm sitting there like, what? Why? I said we have a lot of guys, we have a lot of members that have serious rabbit ears. I was said this is not going to be good for them. They're gonna have to learn quick to get over that aspect, because I mean I played Sunday, and we came off a 9, and there was all the morning group guys just shooting the shit, hooting and hollering, cracking beers, cracking drinks. And next thing I know, like I'm walking to the 10th tee and I'm sitting there. Oh man, I hope none of our guys are sensitive to noise, because guess what? You're hearing it. They're playing music and whatnot. But going back to it, I played this morning with my dad, and we were sitting, you know, where the seats are, and
Hmm.
he got me a beer, and I cracked it open, and I ran around to go grab one thing, do something. I came back, it's like warm.
Yeah, it's
Didn't even
just
want to drink it.
there's something about and maybe it's us too with walking so much that like if I can put something in a tumbler too that lasts
Mm-hmm.
a lot longer, beer doesn't taste good from a tumbler.
Nah.
Vodka mixed drinks taste phenomenal from a tumbler. They just stay cooler better. Even when the ice melts a little, it just gets better. I feel like something about beer in a tumbler is just impossible to drink as well, I think. And I love having a tumbler when I'm out there walking. It just makes it so much easier to have 32 ounces of something and stay ice cold from first hole to hole 15 rather than, a can that's, you know, not even cold from my tee shot to the iron shot I'm going to hit next. So there's just, I don't know. There's a lot in the play of the go-to drink. And I want to know our fans' go-to drinks.
I
So
was about to
guys,
say, yeah.
hit us up on at Enjoy the Walk Pod on Instagram or Twitter. Tweet at us or let us know on Instagram. What's your favorite go-to drink during the round? And I feel like a lot of people are going to say transfusions. I feel like a lot of people are going to say some sort of mixed drink, but I have faith in the beer community. I think there's a lot of beer guys out
And
there.
I would like to know their opinions and whether, your go-to drink is also seasonal. Do you have a fall go-to drink? Do you have a summer go-to drink? I would like to know that too, because I
And
guess you can say
for
I
you,
have I'm a fall. It's basically based on weather and mood.
I know what that winter go-to drink is for everybody.
What's that?
Fireball.
Oh, geez.
Warm up them lungs, baby. Gotta warm up the lungs with a little
Yeah,
fireball.
right. When we play winter ball, no doubt.
Whew. Yeah, well, you gotta do something a little more. Either whether it's fireball or what do they call them, hot toddies, little Baileys in your coffee, maybe.
I
Warm
walk over to
yourself
the
up
guys who
warm.
smoke cigars and just hover my hands over there, over like the burnt end of it. Just let's heat up.
Hey, whatever you got to do to keep those bones moving. It when it's winter golf, you can.
Oh
It's
man.
at all costs. It's all acceptable at that point.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's not talk about that. We still got a
I
lot of
like it.
summer
I like
left.
it. Moving on from that, then, man. Checking out our website, guys, www.enjoythewalkpod.com. We've updated our pricing on there. Our hats are all on sale, $24.95 for the camo trucker hats right here, guys, with our black and white Enjoy the Walk shields. We have the gray and black trucker hat on there as well as the gray dad hat with the black shield as well, guys. That's all $24.95. And we just released the new United We Walk line from Enjoy the Walk. So, guys, we have hats, a couple shirts, a really awesome mug on there that is an American flag out of all of our Enjoy the Walk shields. So go check that out, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the new line of apparel. Dante, we've got PGA Tour golf to talk about.
Yes,
The
we do.
RBC heritage took center stage in front of the entire sports world for a change. It was not overshadowed by Master Overhang, and it did not disappoint.
It didn't. It was fun to watch, and I know we said this before we basically started going on, hit the record button, but I love when the PGA host tournaments and all the greats go, or all the top guys go, and it's on a shorter course, because them long ball hitters struggled a bit. They
It was
had to be
incredible,
accurate.
man. My kind of like text message group was going nuts on Saturday and Sunday on just the God, I love this. Man, this is amazing. This is incredible. It's just what an even field. What a beautiful course. And like time and time again, people forget who designed the course, Pete Dye. Pete Dye was diabolical in the way he made people think around a golf course. He didn't design tracks that were 7,500, 7,800 yards. He designed tracks that made people hit golf shots. You didn't hit driver every hole. You hit 2-iron here. You hit some guys were hitting 6-iron off some tee boxes just to get themselves in play. The RBC Heritage is a phenomenal track to even the entire industry of golfers, from guys who average 280 to guys who average 320, and even the guys that average less than 280 contend. CT Pan, who's like 5'5", 125 pounds soaking wet. Yes, it's an exaggeration. That's not fact. But he's skinny. He's short. He's not a bomber. He won last year, and he won by a couple strokes. Like it's a ball striker's course, and it shows who the great golfers are. And I think it showed again this week. You had Victor Hovland up there in the top 20. You had Joaquin Niemann, who's not a bomber, but is finally playing some good golf. Sergio Garcia, phenomenal ball striker. Terrell Hatton, amazing ball striker. Daniel Berger had the lead. He was contending again after winning last week, so he's on a little bit of a heater. So, I mean, guys like that, Abraham Answer, another guy, T2 right there, not a long ball hitter, just a absolute ball striker. And I don't think Webb Simpson, who ended up winning, is notoriously a long ball hitter. He hits it maybe longer than, your short guys, but he has had a phenomenally ball striking display over the last, I think 10 to 15 months. And it showed here, and that's why he won. His iron game was incredible.
And another thing too, regarding like long and short ball hitters, besides that, the field was stacked. And if you looked at the leaderboard from Thursday into Friday, you're saying, all right, well, here are the same top 10. Bryson's in the mix, and there's a few other guys in the mix that usually, are in your top 10 all the time. And then next thing you know, they're on the lower end, and they're not even getting TV time Saturday and Sunday. Next thing I know, Terrell Hatton's up there in the mix, and they're like, oh man, he won before COVID. Can he do it after COVID, or quote unquote after COVID, before the break and after the break? Would this be cool to see? And then they're talking about other guys here and there. Like I was watching Abraham Answer just start striping them, and that's probably the coolest thing to see, because it just goes to show how strong the field really is. when it's almost at a fully equal level of play.
It was really cool to see. I feel like the world got introduced to Abraham Answer at the President's Cup this past year down in Australia, when the big kind of media thing was, oh, he called out Tiger, he wants Tiger. He put up a hell of a battle, and people got to see. I think the whole weekend, Abraham Answer was the international's kind of MVP. He played well. He beat everyone else in an absolute beatdown. His matches were incredible, and it just showed again this past weekend at the RBC how good of a player Abraham Answer is. And I would not be surprised to see him contend in some major championships in this fall. I think he's a phenomenal player. Someone I want to talk about who, I think hasn't gotten a lot of airtime in the past, maybe I think year or so, has been Daniel Berger. I think he's kind of gotten overshadowed. He's kind of like I don't want to call it ugly duckling of the crew of like the Spieth, Thomas crew out there, but he's been seen hanging out with those guys, and he's finally getting his due. It's fun to see him playing well. Seeing him win last week and then really contend and almost have a shot at it again this week. It was fun to see, and I'm happy to see him playing well.
Yeah, and I think another like underrated thing too is, the guy was doing well on tour. Then he lost his PGA Tour card and had to get it back. Did some events on, Corn Ferry, got it back. And people just, that kind of is not even in the news. It's
Nope.
like this guy was not even considered a PGA Tour player almost a year ago, and he won one tournament, and he was in the mix pretty good in this past one. It's just like, it's crazy how some things get overlooked.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, he played in the President's Cup in 2017. Like you were saying, I think that was right after he got his card back. So, I mean, it was phenomenal to see this guy's rise into playing well and playing well consistently on tour. The year before that, he had lost it all pretty much and had to fight from ground zero all the way back up through, I believe at that time he went through the Corn Ferry Tour route. But just to see a guy fight like that and just absolutely have the grit and determination to never give up on a game that so easily demoralizes people when you lose it that quick. It's awesome to see him having the success, and it's kind of the age-old story. Just when you think you've lost it all, just never stop fighting, because he's the perfect example of what can pay off and what can turn out after a good fight.
Oh, no doubt. Couldn't agree more. And
So
another thing I liked about it too, again, is as viewers, without the fans, the mics are picking up, and if the announcers really aren't speaking, the mics are picking up a lot more from the players, even if they aren't mic'd up. I know Brooks Koepka said that, but they actually, like, the PGA Tour Instagram account actually showed, which I thought was pretty crazy and pretty funny. I mean, I guess Bubba and Wesley Bryan were playing against each other. I think they posted today. They ended up playing like a individual match
yep.
together, and they were showing clips of them, chirping each other back and forth, which I thought was great. And dude, and that's a man. We need that to see. We
It's
need to hear
incredible.
that.
That's going out there. There's always been rumors of this stuff like, oh, like Phil over the last decade or two has always had these big money matches during PGA Tour events, like walking up to the first tee or even approaching guys he knows he's playing with in the clubhouse and saying, hey, like, let's get our own match going, 100 a hole or something like that. Like ended up, 5-6 grand in a freaking 18-hole match and in a Saturday in a PGA Tour event. And this stuff's going on. These guys are fierce competitors. Their pockets are loaded. So they're not just playing for the dollar or two that you and I are playing with. And it's awesome to see that, like, all right, yeah, these guys are doing it. And not just like the lower end of the pack, like the Koepkas out there are doing it. The high end tour professionals out there are still having these side money matches. That's exciting to see. And that adds, I think, an extra element to the PGA Tour that's been missing for so long, is hearing these inside access kind of comments between all these guys.
Yeah, and then I think it makes it fun too for those guys that are kind of in contention, or they make the cut and they're not necessarily in contention. So say like you're going into the weekend and it's Saturday, you finish the Saturday round, say at, I don't know, 8 under, and number one's leading at 18 under. you're sitting there thinking, well, I already have to shoot 10 under plus. That's really hard to do. At least, hey, why don't I, if I want to try and focus and maybe get myself up in the ranks to get a little bit higher of a paycheck, why don't I just kind of challenge my playing partner for the day? See what happens there. See if we can kind of pick and choose our battles and chirp each other to kind of get a little of our competitive juices still going, because sometimes on a mental side of it, you look at it, you're like, well, I'm out of it. And then you just kind of go through the motions. And next thing you know, you go from 800 to 200 and you just lost thousands of dollars.
Right. And that's what the thing is too. It's like, it's giving these guys another kind of incentive to play when, like you said, they might be out of the large purse, but they still might be in kind of their quote unquote money match between the two of them. So it's fun to see. And I'm excited to hopefully see more of it as we move into the next couple of tour stops here. Next week, being out at the Rocket Mortgage Classic, I believe in Detroit, Michigan. And so that'll be fun to see. I hope they cover it well. They've been doing a better job. Each week seems to get better. The coverages seem to go through and say, you know what, hey, we're figuring out with no fans. We're starting to understand what we want to cover that's different from how we used to cover it. And it's fun to see whether it's the Golf Channel or NBC or whoever it is, kind of start adapting to no fans and start understanding what we've been wanting to see for months on end now.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, I think they should, this whole no fans and fans thing, because I know the PGA Championship said they're hosting it. They're having it at TVC Harding Park.
Mm-hmm.
And they just said they're doing away with fans. I think the PGA should stop playing cat and mouse with the viewers and just shut it down and basically say no fans, because obviously the viewership from, watching it on TV, they're still doing a great job broadcasting it. And like you said, and like we've been talking about, we're getting a different it's like a different time. We're getting it's like new broadcasting in a way. It's new viewership because they have to cope with COVID and this pandemic on how are we going to be able to broadcast this and kind of what to give the viewer. And they're actually kind of doing I'll give them props, even though we trash them all the time. Props to them making the viewership and the program actually worth watching, because you're picking up on things that you normally wouldn't. And they should just do away with no fans this year. I mean, everybody's taking a hit with a bunch of stuff. Just call it no fans the rest of the PGA Tour. You'll figure it out.
Absolutely. So, yeah, guys, we're excited to kind of see what the future holds for the broadcast. As we always said, we know it can get a ton better. But we'll hopefully see more chatter like that, more of those side matches, more of all that kind of, just I think the good old boy golf that we know goes on out there. But guys, I think that's it for us this week. Happy to bring on a top 10 world ranked long driver, a Symetra Tour Pro, and just an absolute, I think, addict of the game in golf with Alex Phillips here on the show next. So we'll bring her on and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the show. Like we said, guys, we have a top 10 world ranked long driver with us, Symetra Tour Pro, and hoping to, I imagine, get back out there and get competing in either shape or form as soon as things, normalize themselves. But happy to welcome Alex Phillips onto the show. Alex, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thank you. So you said you're out in the Las Vegas area, in the Nevada area. Is that where
Nevada.
Is that where it all began for you?
Yeah, born and raised up in Reno, Nevada. I played a lot of other sports, but got into golf. And then I was super lucky to get out to the 805 and play golf at Cal Poly. Played under Coach Cartwright for 4 years, and then ended up staying as a coach for a year. And I miss it every day. I miss the wine. I miss the beach. But, I'm here enjoying my 108-degree heat in Vegas.
Wow, we were just complaining about 90-degree.
Yeah, I just got off the golf course and it was 108.
Is there like tips and tricks to like bear that heat, or is it just mind over matter at that point?
Don't get too drunk too quickly is kind of the rule.
Fair, totally fair.
No, I mean, what's so crazy is you get used to it so quickly. Your body really adapts. Like my sister went to school in upstate New York. When I went to go visit her, she was in a sundress and I was in jeans, boots, and a jacket. Like it's just so different being there. And now that she lives here, if it's under 70, we're in sweaters. Like you just get so used to the heat that it's really not that bad.
For sure. Dante and I kind of experienced that when we went down to Florida last year. It was, we left like 20-degree weather and went down to
brutal.
about 60 degrees. And of course we were in like flip flops and a t-shirt because we thought 60 degrees felt like, you know, a heat wave, and everyone around us was in jackets and, you know, sipping on their coffees because they were freezing. So I think I know exactly what you mean as far as your body.
It's so crazy how you get used to it.
Yeah.
I've come to the realization wherever you're at, winter will always be a winter. It's just, do you want to deal with 10-degree weather or do you want to deal with 60-degree weather? And I'll deal with 60-degree winter weather
and
any day of the week.
Like summer here is our winter. Like you don't really go outside that much, but we still can. You can still play golf in 110-degree weather. It sucks, but you can still play golf. Whereas, you know, in Chicago, you're not playing golf for 6 months.
No chance.
Nope, not at all.
That's something I wish we both could say is we have golf year round. Some winters are better than others to us here in like the northeastern part of the United States. But, you know, sometimes we can get out there in those winter jackets and play. And other times there's 3 feet of snow on the ground and we're not so lucky.
Listen, I've played year round before. It's just, do you want to be crazy enough to bring a drill and a drill bit to drill in the a hole into the ground in order to just stick the tee in there? Listen,
back in Reno.
I'm hitting lob wedges 190 yards because it hit off the green and skyrocketed into the air.
The best part is there's no water hazards though because it just bounces off the ice.
My next statement
was going to be
true.
Exactly that.
Our home course, we had this one par 5 where you could cut the corner every winter because you would just hit it and it would bounce over the pond about 3 or 4 times and then you'd be right in front of the green. It was the greatest play ever.
Great plan.
It's a completely different game. It's funny because a lot of our friends, like the friends I play with and whatnot, we have our winter yardages and we have our summer yardages.
Oh, totally.
Because it's like you have like 150 yards, you're going like 2 clubs less because you got to play for the bounce.
Oh yeah, landing on the green is not going to happen.
Nope.
So take us through that. I want to know like geographically where your favorite place is to maybe compete with the World Long Drive, because I feel like you guys travel all over the country and see so many different parts of the country in that, you know, spectrum of cold weather, hot weather. You know, where has been your number one place to compete and have a lot of fun and see the ball fly?
The best place to compete is Mesquite. Why everyone loves Mesquite as the best grade is because it's soccer fields. So it's soccer field. So it's dead flat for hundreds of yards. So whereas like Worlds this year, one side of the grid was hotter than the other because there was like a little hill. And so if you got off the back side of the hill, it bounced harder, right? So it was kind of, so people that were like playing a draw off the right side kind of had that advantage of maybe hitting that hill, getting that bounce. So Mesquite is the best grid because it is field. So it's dead flat. So that's one reason we love it. It's also, I mean, it's not Denver, but we're at 3,000 feet in Mesquite. So we do have a little bit of help with the altitude. And it's desert heat, you know, so it's warm enough. As long as the wind is in your face, Mesquite tends to be the best place. To visit, not so much. I mean, it's Mesquite, but you know, actually, you know, I'm from Reno. I hate everything about Southern Nevada, but being here for 5 years, Vegas is great. Mesquite is amazing. If you ever get the opportunity, they have some awesome golf courses out there. The golf courses are beautiful. It's basically Utah where they have all the red rocks and stuff, and it is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's one place I haven't been. I don't know about Dante, but it's
there
always
yet.
on the list. I feel like it photographs well. Like you said, it's
The
that
golf
red
courses out
rock.
there are gorgeous.
Yeah, and it's definitely on the list. We've put it on, I think, the top of the list as far as just West in general, the desert Western area in the United States in general.
I think
There's
the
some great golf out here.
furthest west I've been I lived out there was Illinois, and then made it back to the East Coast. So
Illinois is the East Coast.
I mean,
I beg
all
to
right,
differ,
so I'm
but
gonna cut him some slack. He's on like the shore of Jersey area, not close.
I'm about an hour from Atlantic City.
So
Okay.
that's west,
Yeah.
because there's not much east.
Midwest.
Yeah. There's not much east.
Is there no such thing as Midwest anymore? It's just East and West.
I mean, like,
Now you draw it at the Mississippi. It's one hard
Yeah.
line.
basically anywhere I don't want to live is east. So like Illinois and east, no one wants to live there.
No.
Fair enough. So obviously you're a Cali girl. You want to be back in Cali. That's the end goal, right?
I love California. I miss it so much. I miss the beach. My dog loves the beach. So we get spoiled and get to go out there and visit all the time.
Love that. So talk us through how you got to Cal Poly. Like, what was your kind of growing up in the game? How did you, take the steps as like a junior golfer to set yourself up to go play college golf?
I did not take the correct steps, to be honest. I never played AJGA, IJGT, FCWT. I never played any of those. I won the state high school championships my junior year. I had an average drive of about 285 in high school, and I had over a 4.0 GPA and a 32 on my ACT. The fact that I had those kind of grades, I had those kind of test scores, and then I could hit the ball that far, most coaches, that letter wrote itself. I literally wrote like a 2-sentence letter that was like, hey, my name's Alex. I just won state. I hit the ball this far. I got 32 on my ACT. If you're interested, let's talk more. Every single coach wrote back, because you don't get a lot of students that are student athlete instead of just an athletic student. It's especially a school like Cal Poly where it's very academically strenuous. You want the best athletes, of course, but you also want athletes that are going to stay academically eligible for 4 years. So we get a lot of engineers, a lot of students that are focusing more on the athletic side. So a coach that wanted someone that could do both, I was very lucky to find coach. But that letter definitely wrote itself after winning state, because, only 50 girls can say that. Yeah, it's Nevada, and we don't have like quite the competition that somewhere like California has. But the fact that I could say that and I can hit the ball that far, it's tough to beat that. So
I will say, like you said, there's only 50 girls in the country that can say that, and to have that on the resume is pretty tough to beat. Another gentleman who we have on the podcast sometimes back and forth, he won the Pennsylvania State Championships, and he had the same quote unquote problem. Was he didn't have to write a long resume. It kind of wrote itself. And that's pretty neat to know that, obviously the grades backed up the accomplishments on the course, because whether it's golf or other sports, a lot of times it's kind of the vice versa of the, kids get a great rap sheet, whether it's travel baseball or travel basketball, or like you said, the AJGAs, the IJGTs, and they get that kind of sheet. But then it's like, well, are they scraping by on the other side just to make ends meet? So that's really neat to hear that it was kind of, the grades backed up the personal accomplishments on the course.
And that's exactly who I recruited when I was coaching, because I was in charge of recruiting for a year. And that's the students I wanted, was the ones that, they might not have been the top, but they're in the top rankings, but they're academically going to be able to get through Cal Poly. Cal Poly is not an easy school, especially a lot of our athletes were engineers. That's also a big reason I chose Cal Poly, was to study biomedical engineering. He was one of the only they can't say you can't study it, but they're always like, hey, you should study communications.
Business. Yeah.
Kind of sounds like Dalton's experience with architecture.
Yeah, so that was kind of the same thing I ran into, and why I ended up going to like a smaller Division III school was because I wanted to study architecture, and I ran into the same thing. I wasn't a standout on the golf course as much as like some of like the state champions or like your high-ranked AJGAs, but like I could play enough to like make some of the like the smaller D1 teams, but it was always the same conversation of, hey, if you really want to do architecture, you're probably not going to play for me. And it was just like the unfortunate truth of what I was going down.
Exactly.
It's a tough conversation for a lot of college kids to have.
It really is. And that was a big thing with me, is that coach would allow me to do that. Mind you, I got there the first year and realized I had to take a lab for 4 hours that didn't count for credits. And I was like, no, I'm going to study poli-sci. So I ended up, I got to make that decision. A coach didn't make it for me, which,
Sure.
It's a tough conversation. And I saw both sides of it in the recruiting stage in high school. And then as a college coach, I got to see the other side of it. And it's like, yeah, we want you, but we also want you to have time to practice. We want you to be able to play for 4 years. If we're going to put the time and the effort into recruiting you and teaching you, we want you to be able to play for 4 years. And engineers, after 3 years, they just have so much lab time. Most of them don't get to play their senior year because they're just in labs. They can't compete, and which, just like you said, you're going to either choose the school for the academics or not.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunately a very kind of hot or cold situation. Like you said, whether it's labs or whether it was, for like me was studio time, we had 5-hour studios 3 days a week, and it was kind of the same deal. And I was blessed with a coach that said, all right, you can, I don't want to say break the rules to make the rules, but he's like, just get your gym time in when you get it in, or get your practice time in when you get it in. And we were lucky enough to have a couple of us in the program in architecture and golf. So we all kind of banded together and, did both at the same time. We had a couple architects. So it was one of those little special scenarios where you got to just find the right fit at the end of the day and search out what's important to you.
And that's a big reason Coach Cartwright was able to last 20 years at Cal Poly, because he understood that people were there for engineering and he made it work. So it ran him into the ground for sure. He would spend 15 hours at the golf course. He would be there at 5 a.m. for the students who could only practice from 5 to 7 a.m., right? They had class and then lab or studio. And so he was there at 5 a.m. to help those students practice. And then he stayed for the ones that practiced in the middle. And then he went home at sundown because he had players that would come to practice at 6 p.m. Like the amount of time that coach just spent hanging on the driving range with us, I can't imagine. His wife was a saint to deal with him. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a whole nother level of commitment, because there's most sports, you have your team practice and then you go home. Yep. Golf's one of those special ones where we can do it on our own and we can kind of create our own schedules. So exactly. I think a lot of coaches out there around the country deserve a quick shout out and a thank you to a lot of us student athletes, especially on the golf course, because
absolutely,
God knows we put in a lot of wider range of time than most people, and it's not on campus most of the time either. A lot of people are at different venues and stuff like that. So that's really awesome to hear that he was able to spend that much time. That was kind of a name in the industry that I wasn't aware of that had coached for that long. So that's really cool to hear about.
Yeah, and he was actually coaching both men's and women's. One year when I was there, he spent 6 days, all of February at home. One time, more than once, he would be coming home with the men's team. His wife would drive the women's team. They would switch vans, and he would take the women's team from like Santa Barbara, take them to the next event, and she would drive the boys home. Like that was the amount of time that my coach put in both of his teams. And I can't imagine the amount of hotels he slept in. I couldn't last a year coaching, and he did it that long. He's retired this year. So we're excited to see where the program goes with our new coach, but Cartwright's a staple at Cal Poly.
That's awesome. That's so cool. He's definitely got some frequent flyer miles to use now that he's retired.
Oh my God.
That's crazy. So talk us through, you said you coached for a year right after you graduated, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
What kind of led you into the I'll stay for a year and coach mentality? And like, how was your helping recruiting? Did it stem a lot from, like you said, your experiences there in choosing Cal Poly in the first place?
Yes. One of the big things was I did not want to leave the beach yet. So I was not ready to leave. I was like, Coach, you should give me a job. And he goes, okay. And I was like, yes. That's kind of how it happened. But no, it was awesome. I've been coaching with the first tee on and off at this point for 15 years. I worked with a few different chapters. So I've worked with kids. I've worked with different programs. I know the FCWT guys really well. I've just kind of been around it for a long time. And then even when I was in college, I helped a lot of my teammates decide on their schedules and stuff, what classes to take, because I came in with a bunch of AP classes, all that stuff. My schedule was a lot easier in college than a lot of other players. I was very lucky in that. But so when I was helping coach recruiting, I kind of had that, we had architects, engineers, we had business majors, communications. Like I kind of knew what to look for and what to talk to the students about because I had that experience, which was awesome. But it was different. I was young. A lot of the players on my team I had played with. I wish I'd waited a couple years to return back. Which I'm kind of looking at going back into it here soon. But right now, when I did it, I loved it. I got to travel with the team. I got to help with practice and everything. It was an awesome experience. But I also, I then got out of that, got into long drive, started traveling with that. So I've kind of been, a little bit all over the map with it.
Yeah. And That's really cool to hear too. That I'm sure, obviously you said the beach influenced you to stay, which is a no-brainer. That you don't have to explain that to anybody. That's a duh. Like, yes, of course, anyone would choose that. But the girls that were on the team there, as you were still coaching, you said you had a good relationship with too. What do you think it'll be like when you go back with kind of the next generation of players coming up and really not being the core group of ladies that you had known so well? If you do go back, how do you think you'll kind of take maybe the experience of the time you stepped away back and lessons learned to maybe even coach better if you can go back?
Oh, absolutely. A big thing I know is like the first tournament I went with the team as a coach instead of a player. It's pretty vivid. It was Classic Club down in Palm Springs. And I had my yardage book from when I played, right? And I opened it. We're at the first tee. I'm like, all right, girls, grab your, and I looked at it. And all of my notes were like, hit driver over the bunker. And I looked at the girls with me and I'm like, yeah, grab your drivers. You can all hit. You won't reach the bunker. Like, it blew my mind how different I played because I didn't really notice that with my teammates. Like, yeah, I played different, but like we didn't really talk about that as much as I did just with coach. And he didn't really explain how different I played the game. So in coaching the girls, I was like, wow, this is really different. And now playing professionally and seeing how other girls play, like I would be much more proficient at helping and having that course management and knowing how different people played the course differently. Even just talking to my dad, like I grew up with my dad. He was my first swing coach and everything. We'll stand on the tee box now. He goes, this is a cut hole. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm hitting a draw all day. Like we see the golf course so differently. But the fact that we can have that conversation now, I couldn't do when I first coached. I was like, you're doing this. And they're like, no. And I was like, yeah, I'm older than you. I know better. But that's not what it is. It's working with the players and knowing to their strengths and everything, like one of the girls I remember, she had hit a not a great tee shot. She was in the trees and I was like, all right, you're 75 yards out. Like we need to hit a low 75-yard shot. She goes, I don't have that. I was like, what do you mean you don't have that? She goes, I hit my 75-yard shot is high. And I was like, well, hit like your 100-yard club, but less. And she goes, no, I hit it full. I hit 75 yards, but it won't go under that tree. And I was like, okay, then chip out and then get up and down. She goes, okay. And I was like, whoa, in a million years, I would never play that because my chipping wasn't good enough for it. Right. So like the fact that she played to her strength, she's like, I don't have that shot. I'm going to go to where I can get up and down, and having that experience and being able to talk players through what their strengths are rather than what I see on the golf course. That's a big difference. It's something I've really learned in the last few years.
And I'm so glad you touched on that because it's incredible to me. And what I kind of realize now that I'm out of college golf for like 3 or 4 years now is I'm like, whoa, like each one of us players were so different and so diverse in what we were good at. And like you just said, I would have never thought to play some of the ways when we practiced together of how other kids played shots. And it's like, kudos to the coaches out there, especially the ones that had long tenure, of like being able to bring groups together and, tackle each hole with each different player, because that's not something a lot of people can do. And like you said, I think it's learned over time. But it's incredible to see the amount of different ways a one single hole can be played.
Oh, absolutely. And you see coaches growing and learning. And Coach Cartwright had been there forever, and he was very good at that. And he was very good at helping you make your own decisions. He would stand on the par threes and he'd tell you a yardage, and what it's playing. He wouldn't say hit your 7-iron because, he's got to deal with 12 different girls there. He doesn't know everyone's distance, but he's like, this is the distance to hit it. Like the first girl tried to hit it 130. She came up short. So it's a 135 shot. Whereas we had an assistant coach one year and she did the same thing. And she goes, you need to hit 8-iron. I was like, I'm hitting a wedge. And she goes, you can't get that there. And I'm like, you don't know me. Like, you've literally never seen me play. And I hit wedge over the green. And I was like, I kind of stepped on it just to prove a point that that's who I am as a person. But now she is a top ranked coach because she learned from that, and I love seeing coaches that are improving, and in them getting better, they're making their players better.
Yeah, 100%. And that's so funny that you use that example, because I think a lot of people might do that just to say, well, no, you're wrong and I'm right. And that doesn't grow to create good relationships between coaches and players. It ends up just creating more kind of distance and, not getting that team like, morale as good as it could be if you just have that conversation and learn. So that's cool to see. Did you end up taking the stuff that you learned through that 1 year and becoming a better player yourself after all those experiences?
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I returned to playing. When I was coaching, I wasn't. I actually had a knee surgery in college. My scores weren't quite where I wanted them to be, and that's kind of why I took some time off. I took almost a year off. And then I got into long drive. And as I was competing in long drive, I was remembering the things that I noticed with the girls that I was coaching. And then I got back into coaching juniors again and seeing the fundamentals. And it's not even the fundamentals, but seeing the same mistake repeated by numerous players, right? Like I would think about it, I was like, oh, I do that. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm coaching 12-year-olds, but as a 25-year-old professional, I'm doing that? No. So you are reminded of the basics. You're reminded of the course management when you're coaching college kids. You're reminded of basic posture aiming when you're coaching juniors. It's you learn. If you pay attention, you can learn a lot.
There's so many times, I think even myself, like I've been playing the game since I was 5 years old, and you play it too long in an aspect and you start over analyzing things. When you break it down to the fundamentals, Dante and I we joined this mental game class where he talks a lot about course management. And one of those things is like just not forgetting the fundamentals and kind of
it's huge.
Not breaking it down too much. And that's, it's crazy how much we can learn from juniors. I kind of had the same experience you were talking about. I worked with a junior PGA for 2 summers when I was home. And it was funny to me. It was like, I don't even think about that. And these kids do it without a heart, like without thinking, because they're so focused on the fundamentals. And it's cool to be able to step back for a second and learn from the little kids. It's like, I'm learning from these little kids.
And it's just, it just clicks to remind you of things. Sometimes my swing coach will give me a drill and I'm like, dang it, Brian, like that's something I give my children. And he goes, yeah, well, why aren't you doing it? And I was like, I don't know. Like I'm giving it to other kids. Obviously it's beneficial. Why am I not doing it? I don't know. I'm not too good for that, but apparently I think so. So you really can learn a lot from the kids. I remember one time I was coaching at Stanford and I had this one girl, really good player, and she hit the shot, absolutely pure 7-iron. She comes up like 30 yards short. And I look at her and she looks at me, she goes, yeah, I'm from Kansas. We don't got hills like this. But it was this uphill green and she forgot about elevation because that's not part of her routine. And I'm like, that's something that she now has to add in, and you can tell, like, it was like the 12th hole and she goes, forgot about that. And I was like, but in a professional event, you can't forget about that stuff. That's absolutely basic, but something, especially when I go to like Texas, I forget about the grain of the greens because I don't have that, and that's something that you just have to be conscious of and something that you notice when you're teaching the little ones. Like, I'm going to teach you this. And then I need to remember that too.
That always blows my mind is how these pros travel from, region to region to region and can kind of master each little different grain of grass and each different kind of, texture of rough they're in. And it's impressive to me. And I mean, you see guys, they'll do good on a West Coast swing and struggle maybe, in your East Coast, kind of through Florida because they just don't like the surfaces they're putting on.
That's not where we grew up.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about golf is we're all battling the course, and each course is different, and especially region is different, and that's absolutely what I love about watching each different swing and who kind of starts pumping their names up to the top of the leaderboard because it's where they're from.
Absolutely, you can definitely tell.
I drove last week over an hour to play in a tournament.
You went like 3 states away.
Yeah.
Well, it's 1 state, but I can do 3 states, no problem. I can do it. I can swing around and go in 3 states in 1 hour. But
you could play 14 hours and still be in Nevada.
I know, that's crazy.
No thanks.
I can be.
You'll be like Winnemucca.
I can drive an hour to go to the beach, and then drive 2 hours, and I can be in the mountains. Skiing.
Okay, we have that too. You'll just be in another state. It's fine.
Yeah. So I drove, but it's more of like an old coal mine, rock hard, mountainous area, and like where I play, I'm like kind of like more beachy and it's more sandy and a lot softer, and it was just completely two different fairways, and it was only an hour difference. So, and I was just sitting there like slamming the club into the ground, and it was just rock hard. I just wasn't used to it, and that's just an hour difference. It's mind boggling how these pros can adapt so quickly.
Absolutely. I think a big part is the caddies, though.
Oh, absolutely.
I was like, I don't need a caddy. No, they are so important.
Yeah, we've had a couple caddies now. One that's kind of made his home down in Pinehurst, and then another one who travels around with a couple guys on a Corn Ferry tour. And even the caddy that's at Pinehurst consistently with all their different courses. He's like, I know number 2 and number 4, he said, so well. But he said on other courses, caddies that just specifically caddy on like 7 or 8 all the time, he's like, I would send you their direction in a heartbeat, in risk of you not playing well and me not getting paid. I would rather send them to you because I just don't know that course as well. And it's funny because they're on the same plantation. They're on the same, they're on the same property. But it's just incredible to know the subtle differences and how well caddies can truly understand a course and help their players 4 or 5 strokes around.
That's one thing I thought was phenomenal up in Bandon Dunes. Like, those caddies know all of those courses because they get a group that gets there and they play all of them. That was something that really blew my mind up there with those caddies. I played with them, and I was lucky enough to play with 3 caddies. And so I had to loot my own bag, but I'd get to my ball and I'd hear, "You're 148, play it left of the pin." I was like, this caddy's like 50 yards away from me in the rough. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I laser it, 148. And I'm like, oh yeah, I should play it left of the pin. I was like phenomenal. Like,
guys are dialed in.
Yeah. Oh my God. And it was every course. Those caddies are on their own level.
Yeah, there's a reason they're notoriously one of the best places in the world to go spend a golf trip, and I think they've proven it time and time again for anybody who experiences it. We haven't gotten to yet, but just the stories we hear, they're bar none the top in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
and if
awesome.
you go, you have to get Sarah Jo on your bag because she's amazing.
I'll write it down. Dante, mark it down. Sarah Jo.
In the notes.
She's booked.
Perfect.
I love it.
Yeah, Sarah Jo is one of my favorites. I fly her out for events once in a while. She came from an engineering background. She was deep sea fisherman, so she knows wind, she knows grass. Like, she caddied for 7 years before she started golfing. Like, she is like, oh, it's phenomenal to talk to her because she's like, no, like, I just know how wind works. I don't really know how golf works. I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow.
And now that she's learning golf, she's one of the best caddies I've ever worked with, and it's because she started at Bandon.
That's incredible. It's the stories like that I'm always amazed by, the people that have different backgrounds and always somehow tie it back into golf, and sometimes know it even better than the people that grew up playing golf for their entire lives. That's some of the things that amaze me the most. And I think whether it's caddies or whether it's just people within the industry that step into it when they're like 35 or older, that just they end up knowing it better because of a more worldly experience than just the game of golf. Those are
open to learning too. A lot of the players that I meet, the juniors, when it's the only sport they've ever played, when they've been playing since they were kids, they think they know everything very young. And I'm like, no. But the ones that are open to learning, those are the ones that really grow as players and become the best ones, I think.
For sure. There has to be that, like, I think, innate desire to just know more than you ever think you could know, and like just never stop asking questions and never stop kind of filtering in knowledge as you keep going. And it's the kids that stop at like maybe it's 8th grade, maybe it's even high school, maybe they get to college and then they stop. And then it's like, you gotta, the best pros out there, the people that make a long living of it are constantly trying to figure out more and just understand it in such a vast knowledge and spectrum that they'll never truly get there.
And a lot of them, they know like their fundamentals, they know where they play their best and stuff. They try the new things. I play with Tommy Arman III a lot, who's awesome. He's been around forever, Champions Tour and everything. But every time I'm out there, he has a new putter to try or a new wedge to try. He goes, I'm going to give it a try. It's something new. He's like, if I don't like it, I'm going to go back to my stuff. Like he's like, but he's always trying and learning and seeing why someone would do that. Why would someone do a belly putter? Why would someone use a broom? He's like, I'm going to try it. It's working for someone. There must be some merit to it. Because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But those are the players that continue to improve and continue to get better rather than just, this worked that one time, I'm going to use it forever kind of guys.
And then you're stuck. I love it. So speaking of trying things, what made you try long drive? You said you always hit the ball long in like high school, and obviously you hit the ball long in college. But what made you say, you know what, I'm going to dive into long drive? That's what I want to do. That's what I want to try.
So I was at the PGA show down in Orlando, which is awesome. If you guys haven't done that, put it on your bucket list.
Just did last year, first time.
Did you?
We did.
Oh, I missed you.
We did. Next year, we'll catch you next year.
Yes. Did you guys go to demo day?
We didn't.
Oh, come on, that's the best part. So it's at Orange County National, which is a 360-degree driving range, like 500 yards across. Paul Howell did hit it over at one point. It was downwind. Yeah.
Come on.
Ask him. He did it. But it's built to not be able to reach the other side, so you can hit from any point. During the demo day, it is absolutely completely surrounded by all the new equipment, so you can try everything and anything. So it was my first year there. I was looking for a new driver. I was looking for a bunch of stuff. I was still coaching at the time. And, I've always been long, and there's not like a lot of other women that keep up with me on the range. And this girl's behind me, and she's like, if not out driving me. And I was like, who's this girl, right? And she kind of gave me that look, and I kind of gave her that look. And then I realized 2013 world champion Heather Lemaster was on her golf bag. And I go, oh, at least she has a reason to be out driving me.
That'll do it.
Like, she's got the resume. And so she was actually super awesome. We started talking. We were introduced, and she walked me around with me for the next day at the PGA show. Obviously, your first time there is kind of a little overwhelming. And she was amazing tour guide. And then ended up, I was living in Reno. She was in Sacramento. And so she invited me out. I went and practiced with her, and she's like, you should compete. And so I did. Got top 4 my first time, and, been kind of hooked ever since.
That's awesome. It's funny how little like serendipitous things like that kind of happen, and you meet the right people. And Dante and I are kind of big believers, and it just happens for a reason. And you get set up in the right times, and it just more times than not falls into place. And if you're looking for it, you're going to find it, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So after that top 4, what brought you to like the extra drive to really start working out? I know fitness is a big thing in your kind of repertoire now of fitness and yoga and things like that. Like what put you over the edge to really dive into like focusing on long drive for a couple years?
So there was that year in between coaching and getting into long drive, and I have always been competitive. Ask my sister. And I did not do well just going to the gym for no reason. So I had to have a reason. So I looked into doing a bikini competition, like an NPC, and I was thinking about it, and I was talking to the boys at my gym, and they're like, all right, we're all going to go to dinner. Like, we'll talk about it at dinner after leg day. And I was like, sure. And so we got there, we got to dinner, we're all eating sushi, and they stopped me in the middle of dinner. They're like, yeah, no, you could never do a bikini. You should do powerlifting. I'm like, why? They're like, because you eat way too much food. I'm like, you're probably right. But that's how I met all my powerlifting friends, and they got me into it, and I was going to compete. I hit 300 in my squat and dead, and I was trying to push 200 on my bench when I met Heather, and that's when I kind of got into long drive. And I realized at Worlds, my swing was kind of restricted because I'd gotten kind of too big. And so since then is when I've really worked on balancing. I don't really squat 300 pounds anymore. If I pick up, 150, I'm like, woohoo, big day. But it's been 5 years of really a little bit of trial and error, what works for my body and how to keep the strength as well as keep the mobility at the same time. You've seen me getting into the yoga on the social media a little bit, which has been super beneficial. I have all of the toys. I have like an entire dresser. I have the Theragun. I have the muscle scrapers, the foam rollers, the vibrating foam rollers. I got everything. But it's a big, I've always been an athlete, but in working to optimize my workout routine with my golf swing has been really, it's ongoing, but it's been a big part of my life for the past few years.
Well, and as you said, I think everything's always trial and error when you start lifting and when you start figuring out how your body's going to react to that, because one person might react to a set of workouts completely differently than another person. And, if you get too big per se, some people's body might just never get that big that quickly. And they might take years to get as big as maybe some other person gets in a few months or, and it's you have to do it. You have to do that trial and error to figure out what works for you. And especially on an athletic side of things, what gets you to turn the right length to really get the optimization out of your swing. And it's
Exactly.
always fun to see the people that really start diving down the, like you said, powerlifting, or just, I think, weights in general, how their body reacts and what they take to for their own personal physique.
Absolutely. And, I've been very lucky to work with some of the top trainers in the sport. But, like how they work didn't always work for me. So I've taken bits and pieces from all of these trainers and created my own program. And I've gotten to a point that my body is the healthiest it's ever been, the strongest, as well as most mobile. I've gotten to a point that I now know what my body needs to be able to continue to stay healthy and stay strong while still staying mobile, because I did need that little bit of a flexibility rather than just, picking up heavy things.
Absolutely. I think the number one thing maybe people always think about is like at least in the past generation, my dad always says, like, don't go David Duvall on yourself, when he got like really big, really kind of upper body heavy and lost his golf swing.
But look at Bryson DeChambeau.
Exactly what I was going to say next. I wanted your opinion on this. So he put on quote unquote 40 pounds. I don't think it was all in the upper body. He got some big thighs too. He put on some leg weight, I believe, as well. But like, obviously we're seeing him get big. Brooks is big. Tiger, when he came back, was all, I think, upper body, bigger than he used to be. What do you think maybe is the difference in this generation? Is it just more knowledge of how to kind of do both? As Dante said, I think said last week, the famous Brooks Koepka line of like, well, gymnasts can do all these athletic, movements, the power bar and everything, and be so agile yet be so kind of big in the upper body. Is it just more knowledge of how to continue to do both now?
I think it's a lot of knowledge. I think the last 20 years has been a lot of trial and error. Like you said, Duval just got big. He wasn't very mobile. Like you kind of have to have that balance. And I think in the past, especially the past like 5 years, we've gotten a lot of trainers that really understand that balance. You're seeing guys with like Colby Toulier. You were seeing guys like Nick Mueller is a huge example. He's out of Canada. He works with rad rollers, so he's really into the mobile stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he makes me lift heavy things. You see a lot of really good trainers that are learning a lot right now, and their trial and error is able to quickly translate into new athletes. Most of them go through a testing program first. So they're not just like, here's your program, do it. They go through the program and then they personalize it. And because they've gone through with so many athletes, they've gone through all the trial and error, they're still learning, obviously, but they're able to more quickly get you to a better spot and get you to where your body needs to be. And I think that's just a big part in the past. Like you said, when Tiger came back, but he came back correctly. He worked with the right trainers. He worked with the right guys that got him to where his body was functioning. His back didn't hurt, like that kind of stuff that they couldn't have done 30 years ago, 20 years ago, because they're like, oh, well, just lift weights or don't lift weights. There was never that, do bicep curls, but in a lunge, like that kind of mobility is new. And it's much more focused, it's much better, and it's much easier to translate into the golf swing right now.
I think even the biggest thing, and I think you touched on it a little bit too, is like when I stepped on a campus in 2012, the trainers kind of laughed at our golf team saying, well, you want to work out? Why do you want to work out? You're golfers. Meanwhile, like, and Dante can attest to this, when he was on campus for the 4 years like that I was there, it was, well, the lacrosse team's putting on weight as much as possible. And now granted, I understand they got to push their body weight around on the turf field, but it's like, if the golf team wanted to work out, we were kind of like, well, go run or something. Like we were kind of just like put off from like lifting weights, and it's just not that mentality anymore. You see some of the best, teams in the country, Oklahoma State, Alabama, Texas, all these teams, they've got huge golf facilities with weight rooms to boot. They're all in there, they're all working out. And I think the biggest thing too, which I think is really where I wanted to get to, is the kind of focused trainers are really putting the time in to figure it out athlete per athlete. And they're not training, you as they would train Brooks, and they're not training Brooks as they would, DeChambeau, and to come back to you, and they're not training you like they would Troy Mullins. Like it's just different body types, different ways to work out and everything.
A lot of the same things, but differently for your bodies. Mm-hmm. And these good trainers, the top trainers, are doing a good job of being able to do exactly what you need, working the transverse plane, working all of the rotational muscles, but also gaining the muscle when you need it. And they're able to go through all of that stuff. You know, I've been very lucky to work with some of the top guys, and a lot of them are doing a lot of the same things, just slightly differently, you know, and sometimes that slightly differently works for an athlete, sometimes it doesn't. But as long as they're able to know what they need and be able to translate it into each individual athlete, you know, it's great.
For sure.
And it's improving the golf game overall.
And I mean, like you said, Dalton, like, because we went to the same college, and like, you know, obviously I played lacrosse at the time, so you know, we got pushed around a lot, and it was more about just brutal force. So you're just lifting the heaviest weight you possibly could just to put on mass, not necessarily really needed the flexibility aspect for a golf swing. But like you said, I mean, now they're, you know, you'll see like Texas and like all those, you know, top D1 schools that have the funding and have like the available facilities for them. The lacrosse team compared to the golf team, they're doing the same lifts. They're doing these explosive Olympic lifts. Granted, they may be doing different weight, but they're taking their bodies and they're just amping it up more, because, you know, golf's an explosive move. And
it's
taking a lacrosse shot
in a second, you know, 70 times over 6 hours. Like no other sport has that. No other sport has to take 10 minutes off and then come back and perform for a second and then take 10 minutes off. Like no one else has. It's hard to train for that. You know, and long drive is much different because we have to train to hit 8 balls in 3 minutes, and you have to have that endurance to be able to continue to swing that hard that many times that quickly. Whereas golf is like, you need to be able to last for 6 hours. You know, I would love to say 4 hours, but I play women's golf, so 6. But
oh man,
that's one reason golfers are lifting, is because especially in junior golf, I see it all the time. Great players, they get to 12th, 13th, 14th hole, bogey, double, and then, you know, they par birdie in. Yeah, so they're like, well, what? They were tired, but they're like, oh, only 2 more holes, we can play good, right? Like you do that so often,
and you just like hit the nail on the head there too. I mean, you're out there for 4 to 6 hours, and majority of the time you're playing. It's a warm weather sport, so you're probably playing in, you know, 75 to like 95 degrees, like peak
75
time.
is warm. You're so cute.
Rep that Northeastern life right there. Mrs. 108. Mrs. 108.
Oh my God.
Shit all over.
Last time I played in New York, it was 78 degrees and I put a jacket on, and the pro laughed at me, and I was like, oh, that's so cute. My AC is set at 81. So this is freezing.
I was hot today. It was set at 75 in my house. I feel attacked.
I was complaining today that it was 85 and 100% humidity. And I was like, this is
okay.
ridiculous.
The humidity, you win. We don't have that.
Yeah.
You
we have like 12%
really
humidity here, and I was sweating.
But yeah.
We'll share humidity with you any day. I can.
Yeah. The humidity is the killer, really. When it comes down to the humidity, that's the killer. But you know, when you're out there sweating like crazy, and you know the heat or humidity is getting to you, but you had the endurance and able to, you know, push even longer, that's more power to you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it puts you up, I think, an edge on the competition when you can walk down like hole 12, 13, 14 and make gains on the rest of the field. That's something that sets people apart. And I think I want to know too, what is maybe something that sets you apart, or something that you know that you've done in the past that when you don't do it, you don't hit the ball as well during the day? Like, what's the on the grid routine? Eat a lot and stay hydrated. Is it as simple as that?
But it's eating the right things at the right time. We're out there, you know, you get there, you warm up for an hour, you're playing for 4 to 5 hours. You need to be able to have the fuel in your body. And it's not just day of, it's the day before, it's 2 days before. You know, everyone talks about the spaghetti feed the day before an event. Worst idea ever. It needs to be 2 days before, because then you have time to digest, to store, and then be able to use those carbs as energy, right? If you do it the day before, your body doesn't have the time. I can't do carbs before an event because it just sits heavy in my stomach. I don't like it. So when I'm going to events, it's a lot of protein, it's good fats, avocados, that kind of stuff that's going to give you the energy to get through. And then I snack. My caddies must hate me because every 2 holes I'm like, oh, more food. How much food do you have in your golf bag? But it's just a little bit here and there. It's a banana, it's some almonds, it's just a little bit here and there that just keeps the fueling going. It's the players that you see that don't drink water, that aren't eating, or at the turn they're like, oh, I'm gonna have a hot dog. Like, no, that's terrible plan, because okay, so now you just ate that, you're gonna get the sugar high, you're gonna feel great for a hole, you're gonna fail. Then again, holes 13, 14, 15, you don't have that energy, right?
Fast
So
downward slide. Yeah.
exactly. So that is I'm a huge advocate of eating good foods that get you through, and just snacking things. I don't want to have a hamburger on the second hole. That's weird. But protein shakes, nuts, anything like that travels. Like, the amount of, like, I eat pretty healthy, but the amount of like packaged food I eat is like a lot, because it travels in the golf bag well. And chocolate doesn't. So like, you got to have that, what you can travel with, what you can eat on the course. But that is absolutely one thing I drill into my juniors. I give them extra points if they bring Gatorade, water, nuts, if they have something to snack on. Candy, not so much, but it's huge to be able to get through a round, to be able to continue to play well for that long.
For sure. And I think it just goes back to what we were talking about with the workout side of things. It's an elongated process, and you have to kind of slowly keep your body attentive just as well as your mind. You have to keep it focused on the goal. And if you are not eating properly or not drinking properly, the body's energy doesn't focus on the goal. It kind of depletes itself, and then, you can't properly perform. So
Exactly.
it's tough to do. It is something you have to, I think, practice as well on your golf game, is eating at the right times and staying hydrated.
Exactly. And like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's not a sport, you can like eat while you do it. And I was like, yeah, you have to. Like, you go to a football game, you eat, you play the football game for an hour and a half, and then you're done. You can eat again, right? We're out there for 5 hours. No one else is out there that long. So you have to continue to fuel your body. Otherwise, again, those last few holes, your body does not like not having food.
100%.
Mine doesn't.
No, not at all. I get hangry quick. And
Oh, yeah.
That's not a good combo on the golf course.
No. Or like, ever. All my friends know, like, oh, Alex needs food.
Somebody get this girl a pack of almonds stat. So is it the same like for long drive? Like, do you treat long drive differently in preparation than you do like a Symetra Tour event? And if so, how does that maybe differ?
The big thing with long drive is you're only practicing one club, right? So yeah, we have a few different drivers, but you're only practicing a driver swing, right? So you only have to practice for like an hour, and then you're kind of done. Whereas if you're practicing prepping for a tournament, you have 14 clubs. I can spend an hour working on 3-footers, right? And then chipping, and then pitching, and then everything else, right? It's totally different preparing before an event. And then depending on the long drive event. So the boys this year at Worlds, they're there for 7 days, because they have to get from 128 down to 64-32, right? When there's 64 players, that means there's 32 events, right? There's 32 different matches. So they can only compete like once. So they compete Thursday morning, and then Friday night, and then they get down to the top 16, right? So it's a little different on the boys' side. The girls' side, we did our entire pool play and then got all the way to quarterfinals in 1 day. Yay, super fun. We had to hit 88 golf balls at full speed, full length shafts in like 4 hours. That was like a lot, right? Because even when you're playing golf for 4 hours, like, you hit 12 drivers, maybe, right? You swing full maybe 20 times, right? We're swinging full 88 times, because we had 11 different pool play events. And then you got into quarterfinals. So like, that day was rough, because you have to stay fueled. We were in Oklahoma. Like, you got to stay hydrated. You have to take care of your body so you can continue to compete. You could see a lot more out of bounds balls getting later in the day, because girls were getting tired. You can't do that. It is a completely different animal playing that kind of pool play in one day rather than one match.
I think that's the biggest, maybe, I don't know if you call it misconception, maybe that's the wrong word, but people only see the long drive when it's on TV and it's the 1 or 2 matches. And it's
Yeah,
like,
you got to see quarterfinals. That's it.
exactly.
One
It
day.
took, like you just said, the 30, 40 plus rounds or whatever, depending on the venue, depending on the event, to get to there. And you're tired by these finals, especially if they're the same day.
Yeah, especially for the girls division, it's a little bit different.
That's really neat. And I think it's something that's, people don't really think about. It's kind of just the back end that goes into long drive, which is, it's a grind. It's an all day affair. And it's a lot of energy and a lot of focus to get that one ball, especially if there's, like you just said, I think you said a little earlier, some places are different than others. Grids are hotter on sides than others and might take funky hops on grids compared to others. So is it sometimes maybe even luck of the draw to maybe where you hit it and the bounce you get in some of these venues?
Oh, absolutely. That's one thing about long drive we don't love, but it's, you got to roll with the punches a little bit on that one.
For sure. Yeah, it's exciting to watch on TV. I know it's probably exciting to sometimes more exciting to watch on TV than it is to experience it, live and in person, especially if you're on the bad end of a bounce or anything like that. But it's definitely, I think it's something that's, I think still gaining popularity too. More and more people seem to be tuning into these long drive events, I think within the last year or two, at least from my perspective. So it's cool to continue to see that grow both on the men's and the women's side of things.
Yeah, so the Golf Channel actually bought the Long Drive Tour a few years ago, and that's kind of why you've been seeing it more on TV. It's because Golf Channel wanted to help grow it. It's a good way to help try and grow golf in general, because again, a lot of people don't have time to play 18 holes every day, right? Again, it's a 6-hour commitment. You have an hour to warm up, you go play, you're going to go have a beer afterwards. Like, it's a commitment. Whereas long drive is like, let's go hit a bucket, 45 minutes later, and you got the practice and you needed. So it's a sport that we can really help to grow golf in general, and then hopefully to grow long drive, and then hopefully get those players to start competing in golf. I think Golf Channel was really trying to help grow golf in general, using long drive as a catalyst.
I think it's been a great opportunity for him. And I think we see it on both sides, the women's and the men's side. We see a lot of the men's guys kind of talking about the possibility of them switching over. You had Jamie Sidlowski kind of completely hang up the long drive clubs and go play on the Korn Ferry Tour. Those guys don't just hit the ball long. They've got game. A good majority of them got game too. And like yourself, you had game before you stepped in a long drive and still have game with long drive. So it's neat to see, people be able to do both. How do you manage doing both, and what's the schedule maybe even look like for you doing both here in the future?
There's not a lot of us that do both. Most of the girls, they tried to play and then got into long drive later on to compete in something. And most of the guys came from other sports, a lot of baseball players, a lot of, ex-major league players that, want to keep doing something active and competitive. There are quite a few good players. You mentioned Jamie. We had a few players that have qualified for US Opens that have played on mini tours. We hate when everyone's like, oh, they hit it that far, but can they putt? Like, it's not their sport. A lot of them are only there for long drive. It's different. This year has been difficult for everybody. And in trying to play and practice and do both. Long drive has unfortunately been canceled through Worlds. Worlds got postponed. We're still hoping to have it, but we're not sure. And then, Symetra, LPGA Tour aren't even starting till July. So it's been a little different this year, and I'd love to answer that question a little bit not so politically correct. I sound like I'm running for president with that. I didn't actually answer anything, but that's what it is right now.
Hey, we've understood it. We've talked to a lot of people, in and around just the golf industry as a whole, and that's the answer. It's the unknown, and no offense taken to the way you answered it, because it's right. There's a fingers crossed mentality and a lot of what's going on right now, and just the kind of hoping that it comes through within the end of the summer, and hopefully.
And it's not even just the scheduling, which the scheduling stinks, but like last year I played a few events with the Women's All Pro Tour down in Texas, and they were amazing. They set up host families at every event. They had dinners, all this stuff that they're not doing this year. So last year I I drove out there, and then I was able to stay with host families. And my sister lived in Texas. My best friend lives there. So I was able to stay at their places in between and then have somewhere during the event, right? I don't have that this year. So if I were to go to an event, it's a $500 entry fee, it's travel, it's a rental car, it's a hotel now because we don't have, so I went from, entry fee to $3,000 because of, like that's a big difference because now we have to pay for housing. Now we have to do all these other things that as mini tour players, you have to consider, is it worth it to play in this event? Do we play in this one or that one? Because I have someone to stay with, but I don't have someone to stay with because no one can stay anywhere because of COVID. It's not even like everyone's like, well, the schedule came out, like, okay, now I have to figure out everything else that goes with it. Do I have a caddy there? Do I have to pay for a caddy? Do I have somewhere to stay? Is there Uber? Do I need a rental car? Like all those things that when host families are provided, that's taken care of, so it's not even the schedule now. It's now all this other stuff.
I feel like it's taken, men's and women's side of things, both kind of qualifying tours, and it's taken it and just complicated it almost to the point of like we were making so many strides and making it easier for all of these, prospective tour players to be able to chase the dream and make it a little easier on the pocket to be able to do so on both sides of the game. And it's kind of stepped us back and been like, well, now it was becoming, I wouldn't say affordable because any kind of qualifying tour is just expensive. Entry fees are ridiculous, travel fees and all this, but like it was becoming a little more practical than what it used to be. It
was at least an option for a lot of people,
For sure.
Once you get there, everything's taken care of. I don't know if you guys heard the story. Lexi Thompson left her passport in her golf bag, but why was her golf bag not with her? Because the tour takes care of it. It takes all of your equipment to the next event. So when you're at the top, they take care of that. And that was a big thing with like the women's all pro and the all pro tour last year, is that they were taking care of host family, housing for us and stuff if you wanted it. Without that, that's a big expense that a lot of players are now trying to figure out how to cover because it wasn't in their budget for this year. It's a thing that we're all dealing with.
Well, and like, how are you guys maybe attacking that? I see some people going like the GoFundMe route. Some people are getting personal sponsors. What's a way you're maybe looking at, kind of still chasing that dream if at all possible?
I just need to find that sugar daddy.
Come on, listeners, help her out.
I am very lucky in that I have the long drive side. I'm top 10 in the world still in long drive. So what I am able to do is corporate and charity appearances. So I get paid to show up to charity scrambles. Usually I get sponsored by, someone like Corona as I'm wearing one of my old Corona shirts. And so they will sponsor me to be there. I'll show up with a keg of Corona. I'll have people drinking on my hole and stuff. And then players pay to try and outdrive me. All the money that I make on my hole goes back to the charity. So the Corona looks good because it's the Corona long drive hole, right? I then have Corona on the hole. So everyone's like, woohoo, beer. And then they then pay to be a part of this long drive competition. So we're now, I get my appearance fee, the charity's making money, and Corona is sponsoring the event. Right. So it's a win-win on all sides. And so I'm very lucky in that I have that side because that's how I'm able to, put gas in my car so I can go to the next event. Yep. I'm very lucky in having that. A lot of players don't have that. They're getting real jobs, but with a real job, that's real time commitment. That's less time on the golf course. That's less practice time. That's harder to compete with the girls that have the full sponsor. They're able to practice and play all day, every day. Right.
For sure.
There's a lot of GoFundMe, everyone's kind of doing what they can to make ends meet, to continue to try and play, because I had a real job for a minute and it's terrible.
Well, I tell you what, before COVID, Dante and I also had real jobs, and we're liking the other side of things and trying to figure out how to continue this side of things, making some money, but doing the golf stuff. So we know where you're coming from. We know exactly what you're saying. And it's tough for those people who don't have it to find a real, I would say, way of living, because it's all they've known for the last couple of years has been chasing the dream and getting by doing what they're, what they love. So it's nice to see, you have that side of things and are able to make those appearances. How can people get in contact with you to book you for these kind of events?
Social media is like the best way that I keep updated on AFIL. But if you go to swinglikeagirlgolf.com, that is my website, and that has all my contact information. Please don't call me at like 2 a.m. But no, that I'm trying to keep that updated a little bit better, but that will then have links to all of my social media and everything. And so swinglikeagirlgolf.com is kind of the easiest way to get in touch with me, get my email and everything.
Awesome. Love that. Before we let you go, I got to ask, what is your longest drive to date on the grid, and what's your longest drive off the grid?
377 is my longest in competition, which that's everyone's favorite question to ask. It's hilarious because I won an event at 289. I lost at 377 by 6 inches. So there's always that.
Wow. That's incredible.
It's a lot about the grid. It's a lot about where we are, but I did drive a 421 hole a couple weeks ago, so I'm pretty happy with that one.
That's pretty sweet. And that's with standard clubs, right?
Yeah, actually I go shorter in all my equipment. I'm about half an inch short.
Awesome.
So,
well, that is
long drive clubs are USGA regulation, so with that long stuff.
Hey, I had to put it in there for the haters. I had to get in that long club action and get in that topic real quick. What's the what is the length of your long drive club compared to your regular stuff?
Full US regulation, you can go up to 48 inches. There's a few people doing it, like Brooke Henderson, Bryson DeChambeau went to it this week. Whereas a standard club is about 45 and a half. I play a 45, and then I go up to 47 in long drive, because at 5'5" and a half, if I stand up really tall, I can pull off 5'6". I'm not one of the bigger competitors in long drive, and 48 inches starts becoming inefficient for me. So my coach has me in a 47, which seems to produce the most consistent and the best results for me.
Yeah. And something you dropped in there real quick, which I think is just fascinating. You're 5'6", you're not by far the tallest competitor out there, yet you're competing, you're top 10 in the world. What does it say to, I think that the competition, or I guess the conversation, I should say, Dante and I talk about this all the time, where distance is an issue on tour, and people say, well, these guys are coming out, they're other athletes, they're 6 this, they're 6 that, and they're that long. Is technology really helping like the shorter folks out here hit it longer, or is it just because you're working your ass off and in the gym? What's the fine line there?
There's kind of 3 things. Height is going to help, physics. The taller you are, the longer your swing, because you have a bigger radius, you have more time to gain club head speed. But every 6'6" person is not going to hit it farther than me, right? Just because you're bigger than me. If we put the same exact golf swing on it, physics, absolutely 6'6" is going to hit it further than 5'6". But it doesn't mean everyone that's bigger than me is going to hit it farther, right? That's why I do those charity events, because people are like, I can outdrive her. I'm like, yeah, good luck. And that's one thing. If you watch my golf swing, one thing my coach has me doing really well is having those hands higher at the top of my swing, right? You see a lot of amateurs, you see a lot of shorter hitters, they have in their backswing, their hands are kind of down closer to their ear and closer to their head. Whereas if you go farther up, again, that's going to make the radius of your golf swing longer. And with that, you have more time to gain club head speed. You don't have to have the John Daly super long swing club head, right? Absolutely. If you have that mobility, use it. I don't have that. I go to parallel and I'm like, oh, that's too far. But what I do well is I have those hands up high, because in doing that, my 5'6" becomes 6 foot compared to a 6 foot person with their hands lower. Our hands are then at the same place. We have the same radius golf swing. We're able to have equivalent club head speeds.
For sure. That's awesome. And I think it goes back to not only swing your swing, but like the way you have your website laid out, Swing Like a Girl. Like, you can figure it out. It's just about getting the physics to work in your favor and absolutely pound the ball like you do.
Exactly. And I mean, going to 8 balls kind of, made it favor the bigger people, because they can just swing harder and hope one goes straight. Back when it was 4 balls, back when Jamie Sabowski was really good, was because he could swing that fast and hit the grid, right? So, I mean, that's a big thing. I'm a huge advocate to go back to 4 balls, because I'm little and I but I have a very efficient golf swing that I'm going to hit the fairway, you know, whereas I got 8-balled a lot at Worlds this year. I mean, Sandra Karlberg, obviously one of the best in the sport. Believe she's 5-time world champion now. But she is very good at going OB, 357. What? You know, and so it's definitely different going to those 8 balls compared, again, even at the golf course where you only have one.
For sure. Yeah, there's something to be said. I think we all become better second golfers. Dante and I talk about this all the time. Second ball is usually always better than the first on the golf course. So I can't imagine 8 balls off the tee. I think one of them's going to find the fairway or the grid as you guys have out there in long drive. So it's interesting to see that kind of change they made.
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, it's kind of in talks right now, and I hope they go back to 6, if not 4. But it's a different sport, you know. A lot of people talk about it. They compare it to equestrian and rodeo. It's the same equipment, but not really.
I would say not close, but you know, if you can find the similarities, then you know, to each their own. But it's fun to watch, and it's fun to see, you know, you ladies out there keeping up with the men at some points, and it's incredible to, you know, see it out there happening. And I think more and more we see it, like you said, as Golf Channel picked it up, the stands are picking up, more fans are out there watching you guys. It's fun to see, and it's exciting to see you ladies pushing the limits of how far we can hit golf balls out there with regulation equipment.
And that's one reason I was really excited to go to Chicago this year. It was supposed to be held at Cog Hill, which is a huge golf area. You know, I thought we were going to get some really good fans out there. WinStar has been great the past few years, but it is in Thackerville, Oklahoma. Yeah, you laughed. No one knows that's a real place either. So being in a real town, being in a real city like Chicago, I think would have been super awesome for us. So hopefully that still happens, but we'll see.
For sure. Well, we have our fingers crossed for you, and we just want to see, you know, not only you, but the men and just everybody back out competing.
No, just me. I'm the only one that matters.
All right. We just want to see you compete.
Maybe Paul Howell. Y'all had him on a couple days ago.
We want to see you picking up world championships here. We want to see it happen. We want to see the hardware go home with Alex Phillips.
Absolutely.
Well, best of luck in whichever happens, you know, whether it's competition first or some sort of, you know, charity event with you. If you're back out in the golf course, hitting long drives, hitting bombs, we're happy to see it.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much for joining us. You know, I know you said people can contact you on your website and social media. So guys, go out there and do that, and just watch some of her videos. Your swing's impressive.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So thanks again, Alex. Appreciate the time.
Thank you guys so much.
That's the stuff. One shot at a time.